Hello, sixth grade. Today we're starting our mask making project. We have already had our presentation about art history masks and how they've been used in different cultures all around the world, and hopefully you've completed your sketches. These are my sketches. I've got 3 totally different ideas following the expectations to the left on my worksheet, and I've made some notes about details about how I think I'm going to construct these. This video will help you to understand how you're going to construct your mask and to know what supplies to use and how to use them. And where are my scissors? There are my scissors. This is how it happens. Okay, so the plaster for your project is stored in this big white box that will be on the counter. The plaster is folded inside the box in sheets. What you need to do is you need to pull the sheet up and you need to carefully cut with your scissors 1 or 2 sheets so that you have about 4 folds. So there's a fold coming out, and there's another fold, and I had 2 the first time. 4 folds is a good number to start with your plaster. I have a tray. We have 2 kinds of trays. You can choose a small white tray or the bigger blue tray, and it will depend on which mask form you're going to use, which tray you want it to have. I'm going to be using the blue tray. So I have my plaster. I'm going to go to my workspace. The first thing I need to do before I do anything else is cut my plaster. You don't want to wiggle the plaster around any more than necessary because the plaster is inside these gauze strips. You can see here on the edge how the plaster is kind of falling out because it was on the end and it got moved around a little too much. So when I cut, I want to cut about 4 fingers wide on my strips. Once you figure out how wide that is, then you shouldn't have to measure every time. I'm actually going to turn this around so that it's easier to cut. There we go. You're going to cut all of these the same. Working with your plaster is very important. Plaster goes through a chemical change once you get it wet that causes it to begin to harden. You only have a certain amount of time before it will be so hard that you can't smooth it out anymore. So you want to always keep your plaster dry and out of the way of all of your water supplies. And because you're going to be dipping these in water, they're going to drip. If you get drips of water on your plaster strips, then you will have hard spots in your plaster that make it so you can't smooth your project out neatly. Craftsmanship is something we've talked about a lot. Craftsmanship takes intentionally choosing to do high quality work. So because of this video, you're going to know what you're supposed to do. You're going to know how you should do it, but it is up to you on whether you choose to do it the right way or not. Okay, so I have all of my plaster strips cut. I'm going to place them over to the side, ready to go when I'm ready. I have my plastic mask form. This one is an animal mask. I also have people, several different kinds of people. These are all the supplies that are out on your counter, scissors, glue, all this good stuff that you can choose from. You'll choose a mask based on your designs. So for this design, I wanted to make a giraffe. I have a horse mask form that I could use to make my giraffe. I just have to change the ears and add the horns. This is some kind of wilder-rabbit beast that I created. And I'm going to use the cat form today for the demonstration to show you how to turn the cat face form into this. And this one is an old Buddha guy that I thought up, that I would use the person face mask in order to create. So the tools we're doing our additive sculpture with are newspaper, tape, and cardboard, and scissors. All right. I have lots of different types of cardboard that are fairly easy to cut with your scissors. when you cut a pattern using cardboard, you always want to cut from the edge so that you don't waste it. See how I cut from the edge here so that I did not ruin the entire piece, and I can use this for something else. These are some examples that I want to show you before we start doing construction. So this example has 4 different kinds of additive techniques used on it. I started by cutting out a cardboard piece for the head piece. Then I filled it with newspaper to make it stand up on the surface. Okay. I also used plaster strips and twisted them and added them to the surface after I had covered it. And then down here, I used paper mache to get the smaller details. So I used all 4 of the plaster techniques on this one mask. You don't necessarily have to use all 4 though. This mask uses newspaper. I wanted to use the eyes and the nose, but I wanted to cover the mouth. So I had to cover it with a piece of newspaper thick enough so that you wouldn't see the textures of the mouth in the mask. So I just covered it with newspaper. And then paper mache was used to do the horns, exaggerate the eyebrow, and distort the nose so it didn't look quite human. Some masks are domino masks where you only have the eyes covered. This one is all done with plaster. I covered the mask, the part of the mask that I wanted to use, with plaster, and then I twisted the plaster into coils to do the stylized details. You can choose to cover over the eyes or leave them open. So let's get started. Paper mache and working with newspaper and cardboard is a problem-solving challenge. I think I know how mine is going to go, but I don't really know for sure. I've already cut out some ear shapes for my wilted rabbit. And I don't want to use the cat, I want to use these. I need them to be attached here and to come up. I can bend the cardboard and shape it, and once I cover it with plaster, it will stay hard in the style that I want it to. So this one's going to stand up tall, and this one is going to curve over. This isn't laying quite how I want it to. It's not going to be easy to work with. So I need to soften this up a little bit so that it will form to the mask when I glue it down. Or tape it down, sorry, not glue it down. Don't glue anything. All right. So that's my idea for the ears. But I'm not going to attach those yet because I need to change the face shape. I want to give him puffier cheeks and whiskers out here. So I'm going to start with my newspaper. You don't want to wad it up super, super tight because then it's going to be very small and compact and you won't get the body that you're looking for. Unless you're trying to do a horn or something like that. If I were going to do a horn, I would want it to be compact a little bit more. And you can do that by twisting it and then taping it in strategic places. Okay. A good tip before you start is to take your tape and pull out quite a good sized piece, tear it off, and then tear it into small pieces, sections, and stick them to the side of your table. Don't steal each other's tape. But this way, when your hands are busy and you're trying to hold things in place, you're able to just grab a piece of tape and you don't have to stop, put it down, tear a piece of tape, and then pick it back up. So now I've got this twisted how I want it to be. And in order to keep it, then I would just take a piece of tape, put it on there, okay? One thing to think about with paper is the plaster is going to be wet when we put it on our paper, and when you get paper wet, it sinks and shrivels and soaks in. So if you don't have kind of a firm surface built up, it's going to be very hard to have it turn out the way that you want it to. So I'm not using a horn, but I wanted to show you how to make a horn, and there's lots of different ways to make horns. But like I said, this is a problem-solving project, and you're going to have to do a lot of critical thinking and problem-solving in order to figure out how to create the ideas that you have drawn. So I'm going to start again. I usually start by wadding it up the long way like this, folding it in half. So I'm trying to build the cheeks out a little bit, okay? With my ear and my cheek poofed out like this, I think I can make him look like he's got fuzzy fur, more like a fox really than a rabbit. I may need to build up the chin a little bit. So I have this here. I'm gonna take my piece of tape. I wanna tape it so that I can hold as much of the paper down and together and then attach it to my mask, okay? You don't want it attached so securely that you're not gonna be able to get it off, because once we're done plastering, we're going to remove these plastic forms from inside. Okay, so that popped up a little bit, but remember, as I lay the plaster on it, it's going to weigh it down and push it down further, okay? So I'm pretty happy with that. I could do another piece of tape on the nose, but then it's gonna be harder to get off later. I'm gonna try and see if it'll stay. If it won't stay, then I can always add another piece. So if you use your time wisely and you get all of your building done in one class period and your piece is taped on, then you're going to be able to start plastering. If not, you may need to tape extra, because as the project sits overnight, sometimes things come untaped. So if you don't get started plastering, you may want to put that extra piece of tape on there. Those don't look the same at all. That's terrible. I have to take that off. Okay, let's try that again. I might be able to reuse these tapes because I didn't really tape them down terribly. So I think I just need to like not wrap it as tightly. So I'm gonna undo this rather than grabbing a new piece. I'm gonna try to kind of crunch it up a little bit more. Maybe make it a little bit looser. Trying to get the same look that I had over here. That's a lot closer. Okay. So now I'm pretty happy with that. I'm making the mask bigger as I add things, which I really don't know that it needs to be this big. I'm pretty happy with it though. I think once I get these big old ears on there, looks like Bugs Bunny. Okay, well, Bugs Bunny's copyrighted, so it's not gonna look like Bugs Bunny. I will figure some other things out. I'm going to tear some more pieces because I'm ready to attach my ears. You don't need a huge long piece of tape. And I'll tell you, it's harder to plaster, to get your plaster to stick to the areas that are taped. So if you do a lot of tape, you're not really doing yourself a favor, because it's gonna be harder to smooth the plaster on the slick tape spots. The big thing is that it will stay in place until you get it plastered. The plaster is what's gonna hold it and make it a firm. I'm gonna move that up a little bit. Yeah. Now he's got more of a forehead instead of it being all ears. And now I've torn this one off. We'll fix that in a minute. Okay, so going up there. I don't like it. I'm taking this off. It's too big. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this in half. And this is when I talk to you guys about revising your project, this is me revising my project. I wasn't happy with it. It was too big. It was too fluffy. Let's try something else here. And so I needed to change it so that I was gonna be happy with it, because it's my project, and if I'm not happy with it, then I shouldn't keep going in a direction that I'm not satisfied with. Let's try that. So this time I made more of a ball. And it's more puffy. I like it. Okay. I'm gonna take this off. I have to tear it because I taped over the top of it. No big deal. Use this other side. I cut one end together. What I'm doing is I'm pushing this underneath so it's puffy, but there aren't a lot of seams that I have to tape. Same size as that one. Yes, same place. And tuck it under a little bit more. When you tape, please don't tape over the edge. What's gonna happen if you tape over the edge is, then when you plaster it, there's a chance it's gonna be harder to get off. But I just did it because it wasn't staying, so. Okay. And our additive sculpture techniques have been created.